The rain hammered against the stone walls of Windsor Castle like angry fists. Inside the eastern corridor, Sergeant James Mitchell stood at his post, shoulders squared, eyes forward. He had been a royal guard for 12 years. 12 years of following orders without question. 12 years of knowing that the rules existed for a reason. Tonight would test everything he believed in. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. The restricted wing behind him housed the Queen's private archives, documents so sensitive that even most family members needed special clearance. Only 5 people in the entire kingdom had unrestricted access. Prince Harry was not one of them. James heard footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. Quick, determined footsteps. He straightened his posture, hand instinctively moving closer to his radio. The footsteps grew louder, faster. Then he saw him. Prince Harry emerged from the shadows, his face tense, eyes red-rimmed. He wore casual clothes, jeans, a dark jacket, not the formal attire James was used to seeing. The prince's jaw was clenched tight, and something in his expression made James's stomach tighten with unease. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. We share the most powerful real-life moments that will stay with you long after the video ends. "Good evening, Your Royal Highness," James said, his voice steady and professional. He stepped slightly to the left, positioning himself more directly in front of the heavy oak door. Harry barely slowed down. "Step aside, Sergeant. I need to get inside." James felt his pulse quicken, but his face remained calm. "I'm afraid I can't do that, sir. The restricted wing is closed for the evening. Access requires advance authorization from I know the protocol," Harry interrupted, his voice sharp. "But this is urgent. Family matter. I need those documents now." The prince's hands were trembling. James noticed it immediately. In all his years of service, he had seen many members of the royal family under stress. But this was different. This felt desperate. "Sir, I understand, but without proper clearance? Do you know who I am?" Harry's voice rose, echoing off the ancient stone walls. "I'm the king's son. Those are my family's documents." James took a slow breath. This was the moment every guard dreaded. The moment when duty and compassion collided. The moment when following orders meant standing against someone who could end your career with a single phone call. "Yes, sir. I know exactly who you are," James replied quietly. "And I have my orders." "Your name is not on tonight's access list." Harry stepped closer, his face inches from James's. The prince's breath was quick, shallow. "You don't understand. My grandmother, before she died, she left something for me. Something I need to see tonight. It can't wait until morning." James saw the pain in Harry's eyes. Real, raw grief. But he also saw something else. Something that made him hold his ground even tighter. Desperation that felt like danger. "I'm sorry for your loss, Your Royal Highness, truly, but I cannot let you pass without authorization. Those are my orders." Harry's hands clenched into fists at his sides. The silence between them stretched long and heavy. Somewhere in the castle, a clock chimed midnight. "Please," Harry whispered, and for a moment he didn't sound like a prince at all. He sounded like a broken man. "You have no idea what's at stake." James met his eyes without flinching. "Then help me understand, sir. Tell me what's so urgent it can't wait until morning. Let me call my supervisor. We can sort this out properly." Harry shook his head slowly, backing away one step. His expression shifted from desperation to something colder, something calculating. "You're going to regret this, Sergeant Mitchell." The way Harry said his name, slow, deliberate, sent a chill down James's spine. The prince turned and walked back down the corridor, his footsteps echoing in the darkness. James remained at his post, hands still near his radio. But he didn't call it in. Not yet, because deep down he knew this wasn't over. Something was coming. Something bigger than a refused entry. And whatever it was, James Mitchell had just put himself directly in its path. James didn't move from his position for 20 minutes after. Prince Harry disappeared. His mind raced, replaying every detail. The trembling hands, the red eyes, the desperate edge in Harry's voice that didn't quite match his words. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. At 12:30 a.m., his radio crackled to life. "Sergeant Mitchell, report to Captain Thornberry's office." Immediately. James's stomach dropped. That was fast. Too fast. He signaled to his replacement guard and made his way through the castle's winding corridors. His boots clicked against the floor in steady rhythm, but his heart hammered against his ribs. Captain Thornberry's office door was already open. The captain sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. But standing by the window, silhouetted against the rain-streaked glass, was Prince Harry. "Close the door, Sergeant," Thornberry said quietly. James stepped inside and stood at attention. He could feel Harry's eyes on him, burning with barely contained anger. "Prince Harry has filed a formal complaint," Thornberry began. "He says you were disrespectful, aggressive, that you physically blocked him and refused to follow a direct order from a member of the royal family." James felt ice spread through his chest, but he kept his voice level. "That's not accurate, sir. I followed protocol. I was respectful throughout the encounter. I simply informed His Royal Highness that he wasn't on the access list for the restricted wing." "He says you put your hand on your weapon," Harry interjected, his voice cold. "He says you threatened him." "That's a lie." The words came out before James could stop them. He immediately corrected himself. "I mean, that's incorrect, Your Royal Highness. I never touched my weapon. I positioned myself at my post, as trained. I never made any threatening gesture." Thornberry studied James for a long moment. The captain had served in the Royal Guard for 30 years. He knew his men. He knew protocol. And he knew when something didn't add up. "Why did you need access to the restricted wing tonight, sir?" Thornberry asked Harry, his tone carefully neutral. Harry's jaw tightened. "That's private. Family business." "The restricted wing requires advance authorization from the King's office," Thornberry said. "Standard protocol. No exceptions." "Am his son," Harry snapped. "I shouldn't need permission to access my own family's documents. Those aren't family documents, sir." Thornberry's voice remained calm but firm. "Those are state documents. Archives related to national security, diplomatic correspondence, and sensitive historical records. Access is strictly controlled for a reason." The room fell silent, except for the rain beating against the windows. Harry stared at Thornberry, then at James, his expression darkening. "So this is how it is now," Harry said softly. "After everything my family has been through, after everything I've sacrificed, you're going to treat me like a threat." "No one is treating you like a threat, Your Royal Highness," Thornberry replied. "We're following the same protocol we follow for everyone, including other members of the royal family." Harry moved toward the door, then stopped. He turned back to James, his eyes hard. "I came to you as family, asking for help," Harry said. "And you chose orders over compassion. You chose a piece of paper over doing the right thing." James held his gaze. "Sir, with respect, I chose to follow my oath. The oath that protects this castle and everyone in it, including you." Something flickered across Harry's face. Surprise, perhaps? Or maybe respect. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that cold mask. "You have no idea what you've done," Harry said. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Thornberry waited until the footsteps faded completely. Then he looked at James. "Tell me everything. Every detail. Don't leave anything out." James recounted the entire encounter. The desperate tone, the trembling hands, the strange urgency that felt wrong. When he finished, Thornberry was quiet for a long time. Finally, he stood and walked to the window, staring out at the rain-soaked grounds. 3 months ago, Thornberry said slowly, someone attempted to breach the restricted wing's digital security system. The attempt was sophisticated, professional. We never identified who was behind it. James felt his blood run cold. "You think I don't think anything yet?" Thornberry interrupted. "But I want you to write a full report. Everything that happened tonight. And James?" He turned to face the sergeant. "You did the right thing. Protocol exists for a reason, even when it's hard." especially when it's hard. James nodded, but as he left the office, a single thought consumed him. What was in that restricted wing that Prince Harry was so desperate to find? And what would happen now that he'd been refused? The answers, he would soon discover, were far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The next morning arrived gray and heavy. James Mitchell sat in the guard's break room, staring at his coffee. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Harry's face. That desperate look, those trembling hands. The door swung open, and Corporal Sarah Chen walked in. She'd been with the Royal Guard for 8 years, assigned to the internal security team. She poured herself coffee and sat down across from James, her expression serious. "I heard about last night," she said quietly. "The whole castle is talking about it." James grimaced. "Great. Some people are saying you humiliated him. Others are saying you're a hero for standing your ground." She paused, studying his face. "But I'm saying something else. I'm saying you might have stopped something bad from happening." James looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Sarah glanced at the door, then leaned forward. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but you deserve to know. 2 weeks ago, I was asked to run a background check on external contacts associated with certain family members. Routine security review. Nothing major, and Prince Harry's name flagged. He's been in contact with a journalist, Marcus Webb, investigative reporter known for exposing government secrets. They've met 4 times in the past month. Always in private locations. Always without security detail." James felt his stomach tighten. That could be innocent. "Maybe he's just Webb specializes in historical scandals," Sarah interrupted. "He's the one who broke the story about the Parliament corruption ring last year. And 3 months ago, he filed a Freedom of Information request asking about classified documents from the 1990s. Documents that are stored in the restricted wing." The pieces started falling into place. The desperate urgency, the middle-of-the-night timing, the anger when refused. "Harry's trying to leak something," James said slowly. "Something in those archives, maybe. Or maybe he's trying to protect something. Either way, someone high up is concerned enough that they flagged it." Sarah finished her coffee and stood. "Watch your back, James. When royals get cornered, they don't always fight fair." She left, and James sat alone with his thoughts. What could be in those archives that would drive a prince to such desperation? What secret was worth risking everything? He didn't have to wait long for answers. At 2 p.m., James was summoned again. Not to Thornberry's office this time. To the castle's security command center. When he arrived, 5 people were already there. Captain Thornberry, Sarah Chen, 2 senior advisors from the king's office, and a woman James didn't recognize, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. "Sergeant Mitchell, this is Dame Patricia Ashford," Thornberry said. "She's from the Royal Archives Security Division." Dame Patricia studied James with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Sergeant, I need to ask you a direct question, and I need complete honesty. Did Prince Harry say anything last night that indicated what specific documents he was looking for?" James thought back carefully. He mentioned his grandmother. Said she left something for him. Something he needed to see. Patricia and Thornberry exchanged glances. "That's what we were afraid of," Patricia said. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. In 1997, shortly before her death, Princess Diana wrote a series of letters. Personal letters detailing conversations she had with various family members. Letters that contained sensitive information about internal family conflicts. James's mouth went dry. "And those letters are in the restricted wing?" "They were supposed to be sealed for 50 years, Patricia continued. "But 3 weeks ago, we discovered that someone had accessed the digital index. They didn't get to the actual documents, but they found the location and classification codes. We've been trying to determine who was behind the breach." "And now you think it was Prince Harry," James said. "We don't think. We know," one of the king's advisors spoke up, his voice heavy with regret. "We pulled security footage from 3 months ago. He entered the archives management office after hours, using his family credentials. He spent 17 minutes at a terminal before leaving. That's when the breach occurred. The room fell silent. James felt the weight of what he was hearing. A member of the royal family attempting to access sealed documents? Documents that could potentially damage the monarchy itself? What's in those letters? James asked quietly. What's so important that he'd risk everything? Patricia closed the folder. That's classified. What you need to know is this. Those documents can never be accessed outside of proper channels. If that information were to become public... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Why are you telling me this? James asked. Thornberry stepped forward. Because Prince Harry hasn't given up. We believe he'll try again. And when he does, you might be the only thing standing between him and those documents. We need to know if you're prepared to hold that line, even against a member of the royal family. James thought about his oath. About 12 years of service. About the weight of duty versus the pain in Harry's eyes. I held it last night, he said finally. I'll hold it again. But even as he said the words, a small voice in his head whispered a question he couldn't shake. What if Harry wasn't the villain in this story? What if the real secret was something the family was desperate to keep hidden? And what if, by following orders, James was protecting the wrong people? 3 days passed. 3 days of tension, so thick you could cut it with a knife. James Mitchell walked the castle corridors with heightened awareness, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Every shadow felt suspicious. Every footstep made him turn. On the fourth night at 3 a.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered, Sergeant Mitchell. A woman's voice, refined but urgent. This is Lady Catherine Pembridge. I served as lady-in-waiting to Princess Diana. I need to speak with you, privately. It's about what you're protecting. I don't discuss security matters. Those letters Diana wrote, she interrupted. I helped her write them. I know what's in them, and I know why Prince Harry is so desperate to reach them. Please, this is bigger than you understand. Meet me at the North Gardens gate in 20 minutes. Come alone. The line went dead. James sat on the edge of his bed, heart pounding. This could be a trap. A test of loyalty. Or it could be the truth he'd been sensing all along, that something about this situation wasn't right. He made his decision. 20 minutes later, he stood at the North Gardens gate, the night air cold against his face. A figure emerged from the shadows. Lady Catherine was elderly, probably in her 70s, but her eyes were sharp and determined. You came, she said. That shows character. Or foolishness. I haven't decided which. What's this about? James kept his voice low. Those letters Diana wrote, they're not what you've been told. Catherine's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. Yes, they contain sensitive information. But not the kind that would embarrass the family. The kind that would incriminate them. James felt cold despite his jacket. Incriminate them how? Diana discovered something before she died, Catherine said carefully. Financial irregularities. Money being moved through royal trusts to offshore accounts. Millions of pounds. She documented everything in those letters, names, dates, account numbers. She was planning to go to the authorities, but... Catherine's voice broke. She died before she could. That's a serious accusation, James said quietly. It's the truth, and Harry knows it. He's known for years, but he never had proof. Until he discovered those letters existed. Catherine stepped closer. The family has worked for decades to keep this buried. They classified those letters as national security risks to ensure they'd never see daylight. But they're not protecting the nation. They're protecting themselves. James's mind reeled. If this is true, why are you telling me? Why not go to the authorities yourself? Because I'm dying, Catherine said simply. Pancreatic cancer. 3 months, maybe less. I don't have time to navigate the political maze. But Harry does. And if those letters become public, if the truth finally comes out, she smiled sadly. Diana would have wanted that. She would have wanted justice. So you're asking me to let him through, James said? To abandon my post? I'm asking you to consider what's right versus what's legal. Catherine's voice strengthened. You're a good man, Sergeant. I can see it. You followed orders because you believed you were protecting something worth protecting. But what if you're protecting corruption? What if you're helping keep the truth buried? James stood silent, wrestling with the weight of her words. Everything in his training screamed at him to report this conversation, to maintain his oath. But something deeper, something more fundamental, made him pause. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" he asked. Finally, Catherine reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. "Diana gave me a copy of one letter, just one, as insurance. I've kept it hidden for 26 years. Read it? Then decide what kind of man you want to be." She pressed the envelope into his hands and walked away. Disappearing into the darkness as silently as she'd appeared, James looked down at the envelope. It was yellowed with age, sealed with red wax that had partially crumbled. His hands shook as he held it. He could report this immediately. Turn over the letter unread. Continue following orders. Keep his career, his reputation, everything he'd built. Or he could open it, learn the truth, and potentially destroy everything. Back in his quarters, James sat at his small desk, the envelope in front of him. The clock ticked loudly in the silence. For 15 a.m., the castle slept around him, unaware that one guard was about to make a decision that could change everything. He broke the seal. The letter was handwritten in elegant script. As James read, his hands began to shake, not from fear. From anger, from shock at what he was learning. Diana had documented everything. Meetings where money was discussed. Trusts that were supposed to fund charities, but instead lined private accounts. Names of advisors who facilitated the transfers. And worst of all, she'd documented conversations where family members discussed how to keep it hidden. How to maintain the appearance of integrity while betraying the public trust. At the bottom of the letter, Diana had written a single line that made James's throat tighten. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't finish what I started. Please don't let them bury the truth with me." James sat back, the letter trembling in his hands. Everything he thought he knew had just shattered. He'd spent 12 years protecting the royal family, believing he was serving something noble, something good. But what if he'd been protecting a lie? His phone buzzed. A message from Captain Thornberry. "Enhanced security protocol begins tonight. Restricted wing now has double guards. You and Chen on duty? No one enters. No exceptions." James stared at the message, then at the letter, then at his reflection in the darkened window. In a few hours, he'd be standing at that door again. Standing between Prince Harry and the truth his mother had died trying to expose. And James Mitchell had to decide which side of that door he truly belonged on. At 8 p.m. that evening, James took his position outside the restricted wing. Sarah Chen stood beside him, alert and professional. Neither spoke much. The tension in the air was thick enough to taste. James's mind wouldn't stop racing. Diana's letter was hidden in his quarters, but the words were burned into his memory. Every detail, every name, every accusation. He'd spent the day investigating quietly, looking up old news articles, cross-referencing dates. Everything Lady Catherine had said checked out. The timing matched. The people Diana named were all real, many still in positions of influence. But was that enough to abandon his oath? To help expose secrets that could shake the monarchy to its core? "You're quiet tonight," Sarah said, her eyes scanning the corridor. "Something on your mind?" Before James could answer, his radio crackled. "All units, be advised. Prince Harry has entered the castle through the west entrance. He's heading toward the east wing." James and Sarah exchanged glances. Here it comes. 5 minutes later, footsteps echoed down the corridor. But this time, Harry wasn't alone. Marcus Webb, the journalist, walked beside him. And behind them were 3 men in expensive suits, lawyers, from the look of them. "Sergeant Mitchell," Harry said as he approached. His voice was calm now, controlled. "I'm here to formally request access to the restricted wing. I have legal representation, and I'm prepared to explain my reasons to any authority necessary." One of the lawyers stepped forward, handing James a document. "This is a formal petition filed with the Royal Archives Committee. Prince Harry has the legal right to request review of documents that pertain to his direct family members, specifically his late mother, Princess Diana. Da-da-da-da-da-da. James scanned the document. It looked official, legitimate, but he also knew it would take weeks for such a petition to be properly reviewed. "This doesn't grant immediate access," James said. "The petition has to be reviewed by—" "We know the process," Harry interrupted. His eyes locked onto James's. "But I'm not leaving this time. I'm going to stand here until someone from the Royal Archives Committee arrives to discuss this in person. And while I wait, Mr. Webb here is going to document everything. Every delay. Every excuse. Every attempt to keep these documents hidden." Webb raised his phone. Already recording, Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, you can't." "I can," Harry said firmly. "I'm not trying to break in. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply exercising my legal rights as a family member to request information about my mother. If there's nothing to hide, then there should be no problem with processing this request." James felt the trap closing. If they forcibly removed Harry, it would look like suppression. If they let him stay, it would create a spectacle. And with a journalist recording everything, any misstep would be public by morning. "Call Captain Thornberry," James told Sarah quietly. Now, while Sarah made the call, Harry's eyes never left James's face. "You read it, didn't you?" Harry said softly, so only James could hear. "Catherine gave you the letter. I can see it in your eyes. You know the truth now." James said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. "Then you understand," Harry continued. "This isn't about revenge. It's not even about money. It's about my mother spending her last years knowing what they were doing, knowing the truth, and dying before she could expose it. Can you imagine carrying that? Can you imagine living with that knowledge every single day?" James could hear the pain beneath Harry's words, raw, real, the same pain he'd seen that first night. But now he understood its source. "If what you say is true," James said carefully, "then there are proper channels. Legal ways to proper channels are controlled by the same people who covered this up." Harry shot back. "Don't you see? The system protects itself. It always has. That's why my mother wrote those letters. Because she knew the system wouldn't help her." Captain Thornberry arrived 15 minutes later, along with Dame Patricia and 2 more officials. A tense negotiation began in the corridor. Harry refused to leave. The officials refused to grant immediate access. Webb's camera kept recording hours past. The standoff continued. James and Sarah remained at their posts, caught in the middle of something far bigger than a simple security protocol. At midnight, Dame Patricia pulled James aside. "We have a situation," she said quietly. "Someone leaked information to the press. News vans are gathering outside the castle gates. This is about to become a media crisis." "What are you going to do?" James asked. Patricia looked exhausted. "We're going to negotiate. Let Harry see one letter. One under supervision. In exchange for him calling off the media attention, it's the best we can do to contain this." But James knew that once Harry saw that letter, everything would change. The truth couldn't be contained anymore. It would spread like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. As Patricia walked back to continue negotiations, Sarah stepped close to James. "I did some digging," she whispered. "Called in some favors. The breach 3 months ago? It didn't just access document locations. Someone tried to create a false access log. They wanted it to look like Harry had been accessing classified information illegally. They were trying to frame him." James felt his blood run cold. "Who? I don't know yet. But whoever it is has high-level access." Sarah's expression was grim. "James, I think this goes deeper than financial corruption. I think someone's been actively working to destroy Harry's credibility, to make sure if he ever tried to expose the truth, no one would believe him." The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. The complaint filed against James that first night. The rushed security briefings. The way evidence had been presented. It wasn't just about keeping secrets buried. It was about discrediting anyone who tried to dig them up. And James had almost been part of it. He looked at Harry, still standing firm despite hours of pressure. Still fighting for his mother's truth despite knowing the cost. James Mitchell had spent 12 years following orders. But in that moment, he realized that duty without justice was just another word for complicity. He made his decision. "Sarah," he said quietly, "when Thornberry comes back, tell him I need to speak with him and Dame Patricia. Privately, tell him it's urgent. Tell him I have information about the security breach." Sarah's eyes widened. "James, what are you? Just trust me," he said. One more time, because James was about to do something that would either save his conscience or destroy his career, and he was finally at peace with both. The possibilities. The meeting room was small, windowless, and suffocating. James sat across from Captain Thornberry and Dame Patricia, his hands clasped on the table. His career, his reputation, everything he'd worked for it all, rested on what he said next. "3 days ago," James began, "I was approached by Lady Catherine Pembridge. She gave me information about Princess Diana's letters." "Information that contradicts what I've been told?" Patricia's face went rigid. "Sergeant Lady Catherine is not a reliable source. She's elderly, she's ill, and she gave me a letter," James interrupted. "An original letter written by Diana. I've read it. I know what's in those archives, and I believe Prince Harry has the right to access them." Thornberry leaned back, his expression unreadable. "You're aware that by accepting and reading that document without authorization, you've violated security protocols. That's grounds for immediate dismissal."
"Yes, sir."
"I'm aware then. Why are you telling us this?" Patricia demanded. "Because someone is trying to frame Prince Harry." James pulled out his phone and showed them the information Sarah had gathered. The security breach 3 months ago was manipulated. Someone with high-level access tried to make it look like Harry illegally accessed classified systems. They wanted to discredit him before he could expose the truth. The room went silent. Patricia and Thornberry exchanged a long look. Something passed between them. Something James couldn't quite read. Finally, Thornberry spoke. "You're absolutely right." James blinked. "Sir." "We've known about the attempted frame for 2 weeks," Thornberry said quietly. "We've been conducting a quiet investigation. That's why we enhanced security. Not to keep Harry out. To protect the integrity of the evidence until we could identify who was behind it." Patricia nodded slowly. "We couldn't tell you before because we didn't know who we could trust. Someone in the security division has been working to suppress this information for years. Possibly since Diana's death. We needed to see how people would react, where their loyalties truly lay." James felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. "So this whole time you were being tested," Patricia finished, "and you passed. Both times. First by following protocol when Harry approached you emotionally. Second, by following your conscience when you learned the truth. That's the balance we need. Guards who won't be swayed by pressure, but who also won't blindly follow orders when those orders serve corruption." "What about the financial irregularities Diana documented?" James asked. "Are they real?" Thornberry's face darkened. "They're real. Most of the people involved are long dead or retired, but some are still in positions of influence. And they've spent decades making sure those letters stayed buried. When we realized Harry was getting close to the truth, we had a choice. Continue the cover-up or finally bring it to light." "The king doesn't know yet," Patricia added. "He's been deliberately kept in the dark by his advisors. The same advisors who benefited from the original corruption. We've been building a case, gathering evidence. Harry's petition, his public stand tonight, it gives us the opening we need." James struggled to process it all. "So what happens now?" "Now you go back to your post," Thornberry said. "And when I give the signal, you step aside. You let Harry through. He accesses those letters under official supervision. And the truth finally comes out. The press is already here. The story is already breaking. We can't contain it anymore. So we control it instead? And the people responsible?" James asked. Patricia's smile was cold. "By tomorrow morning, 3 senior advisors and 1 member of the Archive Security Division will be arrested. The investigation will be made public. The king will be informed, and he'll issue a statement. It won't be pleasant. It won't be easy. But it will be the truth." 20 minutes later, James returned to his post. Harry was still standing there, looking exhausted but determined. Webb's camera was still rolling. The lawyers looked ready for a long night. Then Captain Thornberry emerged from the restricted wing office. He walked slowly to James and Sarah, made a show of checking paperwork, and nodded once. "Prince Harry," Thornberry said formally, "your petition has been reviewed. Access is granted. Sergeant Mitchell, Corporal Chen, please step aside." Harry's eyes widened in shock. He looked at James, searching his face for answers. James simply nodded once, a gesture of respect, of understanding, of solidarity. Harry walked past them into the restricted wing, followed by officials and lawyers. Webb's camera captured every moment. 3 hours later, Harry emerged carrying a sealed box. His eyes were red, but his expression was calm, resolved. He paused in front of James. "Q," Harry said quietly. "That first night when you refused me, you forced me to do this the right way, to build a case, to gather support. If you'd just let me through, I would have grabbed what I needed and run. They would have destroyed me. But because you made me wait, because you made me think." He trailed off, then continued. "You protected me even when I didn't realize it." James didn't know what to say. He simply nodded. Harry extended his hand. James shook it. "My mother would have liked you," Harry said. "She always said the best people are the ones who follow their conscience, even when it costs them everything." Then Harry was gone, walking down the corridor toward a future that would be complicated, painful, but finally honest. Sarah stepped beside James. "So, how does it feel to help change history?" James thought about Diana's letter, about 12 years of service, about the weight of duty, and the necessity of conscience. "It feels right," he said finally. "For the first time in days, it feels right." Financial corruption spanning decades, cover-ups at the highest levels, arrests of senior officials. The King's statement acknowledging the truth and pledging full transparency. James Mitchell became briefly famous, the guard who stood firm, who couldn't be intimidated or corrupted, who ultimately helped expose one of the royal family's darkest secrets. But he didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who'd simply done his job, the real job. Not just guarding doors, but guarding the truth. 3 weeks later, Lady Catherine Pembridge passed away quietly in her sleep. Harry attended the small funeral. So did James. They didn't speak much, but they didn't need to. They both understood what they'd fought for, what she'd died protecting. As James returned to his post at Windsor Castle, he passed the eastern corridor where this had all begun. The restricted wing door stood closed, but no longer sealed with secrecy. The archives were being reviewed. The truth was coming to light. Slowly, painfully, but inevitably. He took his position, shoulders squared, eyes forward. 12 years of service. But now, finally, in service of something that truly mattered, because in the end, protecting the crown meant more than guarding doors and following orders. It meant protecting the integrity of what the crown was supposed to represent. Justice, truth, honor, and sometimes, the bravest thing a guard could do was step aside and let the truth walk through. Even if it changed everything. Especially if it changed everything.